My mother said, "I wish you'd never been my daughter," on Mother's Day, then demanded I return the SUV she had given me. I thought the insult was the worst part. I was wrong. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Then you got your wish." I walked out, took the keys, and drove away. 10 minutes later, she texted me, "Bring my car back, or I'm calling the police." I replied with 2 words, "Do it." 45 minutes later, 3 police cars surrounded my mother's house. Then one officer asked me, "Whose vehicle is this?" The words landed harder than any slap ever could. "I wish you'd never been my daughter." My mother said it across the Mother's Day dinner table, with everyone still holding their forks, as if she had just commented on the weather. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. I looked at my mother. She didn't look sorry. She looked relieved, like she had finally said something she had been carrying around for years. I put my fork down slowly. Then I said, "Then pretend you never had one." My mother's eyebrows lifted. I stood up. Nobody stopped me. I picked up my purse, grabbed the keys to the SUV parked outside, and walked through the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't cry. I drove away. The strange thing was, I wasn't even surprised by her words. Hurt, yes. But surprised? My mother had been making me feel like a mistake for most of my adult life. My brother, Daniel, had always been the golden child. If he needed money, Mom found it. If he made a mistake, she called it bad luck. If he needed a place to stay, her guest room magically became his. When I needed something, I was told to figure it out. "You're the responsible one," Mom always said. For years, I thought that was a compliment. I eventually realized it meant, "You can take care of yourself, so I don't have to take care of you." I was the one who drove her to appointments, the one who paid an overdue utility bill when she was short, the one who handled paperwork after Dad died, the one who brought groceries when she was sick. And whenever Mom thanked me, she always added the same sentence, "That's what daughters do." So I kept doing it. I kept showing up, even when she criticized my job, even when she compared me to Daniel, even when she told relatives I was too independent and didn't need anyone. I kept showing up because some stubborn part of me still believed that if I loved her enough, eventually she'd love me the way I needed. That Mother's Day finally killed that hope. About 10 minutes after I left, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Bring my car back, or I'm calling the police." I stared at the message. Not because it was funny, because I suddenly understood something. She wasn't upset that I had left. The SUV was a black mid-size vehicle I'd been driving for nearly 4 years. Mom had given it to me after my old car died. At least, that's what everyone had understood. She handed me the keys at the dealership and said, "It's yours. You need something reliable." I had thanked her. After that, I paid the insurance. I paid for maintenance. I paid for registration. I paid for every tank of gas. The title and registration were in my name. There had never been any question about it. I looked at her text again. "Bring my car back, or I'm calling the police." My thumbs hovered over the screen. The old version of me would have panicked. I would have driven back. I would have apologized. I would have handed over the keys just to keep the peace. But that woman had disappeared somewhere between, "I wish you'd never been my daughter," and the front door. So, I typed 3 words. "Go ahead, Mom." I pressed send. Then I put my phone face down. For the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for fixing what someone else had broken. I drove toward my apartment, expecting another angry message. Instead, my phone started ringing. "Mom." I ignored it. She called again, then again. Finally, a message appeared. "You don't understand what you're doing." I stared at those words. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't understand yet. Maybe the SUV wasn't really the reason she was threatening me with the police. Maybe there was something else behind all of this. And 45 minutes later, I was going to find out. Because when I looked through my rearview mirror, I saw the flashing lights. 3 police cars were turning onto my mother's street. I slowed down before turning onto Mom's street. 3 police cars were parked outside her house. I thought there had been an accident. Then I saw Mom pointing directly at my SUV. I parked across the street and stepped out. One officer walked toward me. "Are you the owner of this vehicle?" "Yes." Mom immediately shouted, No, she is not. That is my car. The officer looked at me, then at her. She reported the vehicle stolen. I laughed. This was the woman who had handed me those keys 4 years earlier and told me the SUV was mine. I reached into my purse. I have the registration and title. The officer examined them, then looked toward Mom. Your daughter is listed as the registered owner. Mom's face changed. That doesn't mean anything, she said. I gave it to her temporarily. I stared at her. Temporarily? She avoided my eyes. You knew you were supposed to bring it back. No, Mom. You told me it was mine. You misunderstood me. That sentence hurt, because it reminded me how often she rewrote reality when the truth became inconvenient. The officer asked us to calm down. He explained that this wasn't a straightforward stolen vehicle case. Any ownership disagreement was civil. Mom looked furious, but she took it without permission. I didn't take anything, I said quietly. I left with my own vehicle. The officer asked if I had proof I'd been paying for it. I opened my phone. Insurance payments, registration fees, maintenance receipts, 4 years of records. I'd never imagined those boring payments would matter. Suddenly, every receipt felt like armor. The officer looked through them. Looks pretty clear. Mom folded her arms. You're taking her side. No, ma'am, he said. I'm explaining what the documents show. The officers said they couldn't treat the SUV as stolen. If Mom believed she had a claim, she could speak with an attorney. Then they left. All 3 cars pulled away. The street became silent. I thought it was over. It wasn't. Mom walked toward me. Her anger was gone. Now she looked frightened. Please, she said. You don't understand. Understand what? She glanced toward the house. I need that SUV. Why? She didn't answer. Mom, why do you need my car? Her eyes filled with tears. I thought you'd help me. I almost said, I always have. But I stopped. Because that was exactly the problem. She had built her life around the assumption that I would always rescue her. Then she said something that changed everything. I already promised it to someone. I stared at her. What? I made an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? She wouldn't answer. You tried to give away my SUV? I was going to fix everything. With my car? You wouldn't have noticed. That sentence told me everything. She hadn't forgotten. She hadn't misunderstood. She had planned it. I took a step backward. Who did you promise it to? Mom finally looked at me. Someone I owe. I stood there in silence. Suddenly, Mother's Day made sense. The insult, the demand, the police. None of it had really been about the car. It had been about control. Mom knew exactly which button to push. If she called me selfish enough, I'd eventually prove I wasn't by giving her what she wanted. But this time I wasn't going to. I looked at the house where I'd spent years trying to earn my mother's approval. Then, at my SUV. For once, I wasn't thinking about what Mom needed. I was thinking about what I needed. Peace. Distance. And the courage to stop being the daughter who always surrendered. I turned toward my car. Behind me, Mom said, "If you leave now, you're abandoning your family." I stopped. Then I turned around. "No, Mom." My voice was steady. "You abandoned me first." She went silent. I got into my SUV and drove away. But as her house disappeared in my rearview mirror, one question wouldn't leave my mind. Who did my mother owe badly enough to risk calling the police over a car she had already given me? I didn't know the answer yet, but I was about to find out. I didn't drive home that night. I parked at a coffee shop, replaying Mom's words. I already promised it to someone. The more I thought about that sentence, the more questions appeared. Why had she assumed my SUV could solve her problem? I finally called her. She answered immediately. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Then tell me the truth." After a long silence, she admitted what she'd been hiding. For months, she'd been struggling financially. A series of bad decisions had left her with debts she couldn't cover. She had borrowed money and promised the SUV as repayment. She thought I would give it back. "Why?" I asked. "Because you're my daughter." That sentence broke something inside me. Not because it was cruel, because it was honest. She didn't see me as an adult with my own life. She saw me as the daughter who would always surrender first. I asked how much she owed. She wouldn't tell me. It's not your problem. No, I said. It isn't. I had never said those words to her. Usually, I would have offered to help. But this time I didn't. Mom started crying. You're really going to let me struggle? For years, that sentence would have destroyed me. This time, it clarified everything. Mom, you told me you wished you'd never had me. I was angry. You called the police on me. I was scared. You tried to take something you gave me. I made a mistake. And now you're asking me to fix it. She didn't answer. I continued. I have spent years fixing things for you. Bills. Appointments. Emergencies. Every time you called, I came. Every time you needed money, I found a way. And you always reminded me that I was supposed to be independent. Her crying became quieter. I never meant to hurt you. Maybe not. But you did. I didn't scream or insult her. I simply told her the truth. Then I made my decision. I wasn't going to punish or embarrass her. I was simply going to stop rescuing her. I told her the SUV was staying with me. So was my money. So were my boundaries. If she needed advice, she could speak to a professional. I would no longer sacrifice my stability because she expected me to. The next morning, my brother called. Mom says you're abandoning her. I laughed. Did she tell you what she said to me on Mother's Day? Silence. No, he finally admitted. She probably didn't. He tried to defend her. She is still Mom. I know. I've helped her for years. He had nothing to say. Weeks passed. Mom stopped calling. Then she started sending messages. First, they were angry. Finally, one message arrived. I miss my daughter. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to answer immediately. Another part remembered the 3 police cars outside her house. I didn't respond that day. Months later, something had changed. I no longer felt guilty when I said no. I no longer checked my phone expecting an emergency. I no longer measured my worth by usefulness. The SUV wasn't important because of its value. It became the first thing I refused to surrender simply because someone demanded it. Eventually, I forgave my mother. But forgiveness didn't mean pretending nothing happened. It didn't mean handing her control again. And it didn't mean becoming the daughter who always gave in. We started speaking occasionally. Careful conversations. Some things still couldn't be fixed. But I had finally learned something I should have understood years earlier. Being someone's daughter doesn't mean you owe them your peace. Family doesn't give anyone permission to hurt you and then demand that you prove your love by accepting it. That Mother's Day, my mother told me she wished she'd never had a daughter. For once, I finally believed her. Instead of proving I deserved to be her daughter, I chose to become someone I was proud to be. I drove away, not because I hated her, because I finally understood that loving someone and allowing them to control your life are 2 completely different things. And for the first time, I was free.